The most probable future for each candidate if elected. It's time to meet the candidates for the presidential election 2020. Donald Trump and Joe Biden campaigning for the opportunity to lead the nation for the next 4 years. In today's video, let us show you the most probable future for each candidate if elected. Welcome to Trending's Finest, where we give you the hottest updates on the world's most viral news, videos, and stories in the most exciting format. Click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to not miss a single beat of the world's pulse. On the Republican side, we have President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence, seeking re-election to another 4-year term. Challenging them on the Democratic side are presidential nominee and former Vice President Joe Biden and Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris, a current United States Senator. We give you all the details on each candidate and, more importantly, what America's future would look like with them at the helm. Stay tuned. The candidates at a glance, starting with Donald Trump, Republican nominee for president. Of the 17 people who sought the Republican presidential nomination in 2016, Donald Trump had among the longest odds of success. Trump had no government or military experience, typical paths to becoming president. He was a wealthy New York businessman and real estate developer, an executive in a business his father had started years earlier. The younger Trump was better known for his 14 years hosting the reality television show The Apprentice, each episode of which ended with Trump dismissing one competitor by saying, "You're fired." As a candidate, Trump tapped into the desire of some voters for a big change in government. His Make America Great Again campaign promised fewer government rules, lower taxes, more jobs, and a crackdown on illegal immigration. He first won over Republican voters to get his party's nomination. Trump then defeated the Democratic nominee, former U.S. Senator and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, in the general election. Trump was sworn in as the nation's 45th president on January 20th, 2017. At age 70, he was the oldest presidential candidate ever to be newly elected. As president, Trump has often taken his message directly to the public through social media instead of granting interviews to journalists or holding news conferences. His favorite platform has been Twitter. Some days he's posted more than 100 tweets. Journalists have routinely fact-checked his tweets and retweets to reveal untrue or misleading information. Trump admitted this summer that the retweets get him into trouble. Trump kept his campaign promise to deliver tax cuts, which have assisted some low-income people, but critics say they've helped large businesses more. He's withdrawing the United States from the Paris Agreement on climate change, a phenomenon that he has called both a hoax and a serious problem. He also plans to end the United States' support for the World Health Organization, which he says has mishandled the coronavirus pandemic. He sometimes has downplayed the seriousness of the novel coronavirus. He also has promoted a treatment that many medical experts have said does not work. Last year, Trump was charged by the House of Representatives with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress in a process known as impeachment. The United States Senate, acting as the jury in the case, cleared him of the charges. Trump is just the third U.S. president to be impeached. None was convicted. Joe Biden, Democratic nominee for president. Joe Biden was a United States Senator for 36 years and Vice President for 8. But his political career nearly derailed before it began. A few weeks after his first Senate election in 1972, Biden's wife and 1-year-old daughter died in a car accident. His 2 young sons were badly injured in the accident. The widowed single dad thought about giving up his Senate seat, representing Delaware, to stay at home with his sons. Instead, he decided to commute daily by train from Delaware to the nation's capital, 90 minutes each way, and be at home with his sons during mornings and evenings. The train trips continued after he remarried in 1977, and he and his wife Jill, a teacher, had a daughter. After Biden was elected vice president in 2008, the couple moved into the official residence of the vice president in Washington. Having ridden more than 2 million miles on the nation's Amtrak train lines, he was given the nickname Amtrak Joe. As Biden rose in the Senate's Democratic Party ranks, he led major committees and championed issues including the environment, health care, and racial justice. Those are issues he still prioritizes. Biden's years in Congress also include votes unpopular with some Democrats. One was his support in 2002 of the United States invasion of Iraq. A strong speaker and debater, he was known for slip-ups and offhand remarks that sometimes got him into trouble. Biden had run for president twice before becoming President Barack Obama's vice president. Obama once compared Biden's contribution as vice president to that of a basketball player who does a bunch of things that don't show up in the stat sheet. A few days before leaving office, Obama awarded Biden the Presidential Medal of Freedom with distinction, the nation's highest civilian honor. As vice president, Biden would have been a solid contender for president during the 2016 election, but he skipped that race because he and his family were grieving the loss of his son Beau, who died of brain cancer the year before. Joe Biden will turn 78 years old in November. One of the youngest men ever elected to the U.S. Senate, he could become the oldest man elected president. Now that you've met the two nominees, it's time to imagine America's future with each of them. The future with Trump. After 4 years as president, Trump will have made at least 2 Supreme Court appointments, signed into law tax cuts, and rolled back federal regulation of the environment and the economy. Whatever you think of these actions, many of them can probably be offset or entirely undone in the future. The effects of a full 8 years of Trump will be much more difficult, if not impossible, to undo. 3 areas: climate change, the risk of a renewed global arms race, and control of the Supreme Court, illustrate the historic significance of the 2020 election. The first 2 problems will become much harder to address as time goes on. The third one stands to remake our constitutional democracy and undermine the capacity for future change. In short, the biggest difference between electing Trump in 2016 and re-electing Trump in 2020 would be irreversibility. Climate policy is now the most obvious example. For a long time, even many of the people who acknowledge the reality of climate change thought of it as a slow process that did not demand immediate action. But today, amid extreme weather events and worsening scientific forecasts, the costs of our delay are clearly mounting, as are the associated dangers. To have a chance at keeping global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, the objective of the Paris Climate Agreement, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that by 2030, CO2 emissions must drop some 45% from 2010 levels. Instead of declining, however, they are rising. In his first term, Trump has announced plans to cancel existing climate reforms, such as higher fuel efficiency standards and limits on emissions from new coal-fired power plants, and he's pledged to pull the United States out of the Paris Agreement. His re-election would put off a national commitment to decarbonization until at least the second half of the 2020s, while encouraging other countries to do nothing as well. And change that is delayed becomes more economically and politically difficult, according to the Global Carbon Project. If decarbonization had begun globally in 2000, an emissions reduction of about 2% a year would have been sufficient to stay below 2 degrees Celsius of warming. Now it'll need to be approximately 5% a year. If we wait another decade, it'll be about 9%. In the United States, the economic disruption and popular resistance sure to arise from such an abrupt transition may be more than our political system can bear. No one knows, moreover, when the world might hit irreversible tipping points, such as the collapse of the West Antarctic ice sheet, which would likely doom us to a catastrophic sea level rise. The 2020 election will also determine whether the U.S. continues on a course that all but guarantees another kind of runaway global change, a stepped-up arm race, and with it a heightened risk of nuclear accidents and nuclear war. Trump's America First doctrine, attacks on America's alliances, and unilateral withdrawal from arms control treaties have made the world far more dangerous. After pulling the United States out of the Iran nuclear agreement, in doing so, badly damaging America's reputation as both an ally and a negotiating partner, Trump failed to secure from North Korea anything approaching the Iran deal's terms, leaving Kim Jong-un not only unchecked, but also with increased international standing. Many world leaders are hoping that Trump's presidency is a blip, that he will lose in 2020, and that his successor will renew America's commitments to its allies and to the principles of multilateralism and non-proliferation. If he is re-elected, however, several countries may opt to pursue nuclear weapons, especially those in regions that have relied on American security guarantees, such as the Middle East and Northeast Asia. Finally, a second term for Trump would entrench changes at home, perhaps the most durable of which involves the Supreme Court. With a full 8 years, he would probably have the opportunity to replace 2 more justices, with the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer being 82 years old. Whether you regard the prospect of 4 Trump-appointed justices as a good or bad thing will depend on your politics and preferences, but there's no denying that the impact on the nation's highest court would be momentous. Let's compare that to Biden's America, shall we? The future with Biden. Biden, meanwhile, has been called a Teflon candidate, but that doesn't quite do justice to his slipperiness. He's almost Sphinx-like. His low-visibility campaign means he can represent different things to different Americans. To working-class whites, he's regular Joe, the Irish Catholic boy from Scranton. To black voters, he's Barack Obama's loyal vice president who's always had that Clintonian knack of sounding empathetic. To suburban women, he's the elder statesman who will bring back decorum to the Oval Office. To former Republicans and independents, he's not Donald Trump. To tantrum-throwing revolutionaries, he's a pushover in waiting. Biden's campaign logo features his famous aviator sunglasses, and what could be more American? But those reflective shades are also quite a good metaphor for Biden's candidacy. You see what you want to. Biden's legislative priorities are similarly elusive. His campaign is adept at sounding radical without committing to anything controversial. He has promised to rip the roots of systematic racism out of this country and transform this country. Exactly how? He doesn't say. On his website, the Joe's Vision section features more than 40 years, plans, or agendas. These include the Biden plan for climate change, the Biden plan to end violence against women, and Joe Biden's agenda for the Catholic community. It's all very repetitive. Joe Biden will ensure everyone is treated with dignity, no matter their race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, or disability. The worry among conservatives and moderates is that President Biden would be a Trojan horse for the hard left. He's so old that it seems unlikely he would be able to preside fully over one term, let alone 2. Biden has already invited Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the 30-year-old starlet of American progressivism, to help formulate his policies. Would he let the young radicals take charge? Probably not. A quick look at the front ranks of the Democratic Party offers proof as to how tightly the gerontocracy, or the old rule people, grip its power. In the House of Representatives, the Speaker is Nancy Pelosi, aged 80. The Majority Leader, Steny Hoyer, is 81. And the Majority Whip and key Biden ally, Jim Clyburn, is 80. Retail politics is their modus operandi. Revolution is not. What is certain is that Biden is willing to spend vast amounts of federal money. The Trump administration has already thrown $6 trillion at the COVID-19 crisis. Biden wants much more. Whatever it takes, he says. He also proposes to increase government health care spending dramatically, and his answer to racism is more tax credits for black small business owners, plus a $100 billion fund for affordable housing for African Americans. Some observers are concerned about Biden's head for figures. He recently claimed that America had over 120 million dead from COVID. In a debate earlier this year, he said 150 million Americans had been killed by gun crime. Never mind, it's only Joe. He won't be doing the sums. Progressives are growingly excited about the possibility that Biden might surprise everyone by becoming the next FDR. That is, he'll put America back to work after the ravages of COVID in the way that FDR rebuilt the U.S. economy after the Great Depression. Biden is indeed mooting a Green New Deal to save America and, as luck would have it, the planet at the same time. But Obama, who also came to power in a crisis, promised much the same 12 years ago. The only hope that Biden will do better is, curiously, the lack of hope he brings. He is in no way burdened by the great expectations that accompanied the arrival of the first African-American president in 2009. Biden offers, at best, a memory of the optimism that Obama inspired, as well as the prospect of relative calm after 4 turbulent years of Trump. His election will be the Democratic equivalent of a giant sigh. Biden's greatest strength is that, unlike Trump, he's widely held to be a good man. He has suffered. In 1972, he lost his wife and daughter in a car crash. In 2015, his son Beau to brain cancer. Americans admire nothing more than triumph over adversity, and Joe is arguably at his best when talking about grief. His ability to emote helps blunt the other Trumpian attack line that Biden is corrupt. As vice president, he appears to have helped his other son Hunter make highly lucrative deals in China and Ukraine. Joe was also apparently complicit in the attempt to thwart Trump's presidency by using the FBI to investigate his campaign. For some reason, nobody wants to believe that the affable old boy is guilty of such crimes. Yet one of the reasons the Obama-Biden administration ended in the ascension of Trump was that Americans were sick of the venality in Washington, the swamp that gets rich selling out American interests. It's hard to imagine that Biden, who used to be known as the senator from MBNA because of his lobbying efforts on behalf of the credit card industry, would lead an altogether pure administration. It's worth noting that the Chinese parent company of TikTok, the Chinese social media app which Trump's Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has suggested should be banned on national security grounds, has hired key Democratic operatives with links to Biden ahead of the November election. The Biden campaign this week forced staffers to delete TikTok from their phones. The Democrats know they cannot afford to let Trump make them look weak on China, which, thanks in no small part to COVID, is now clearly established in the minds of voters as foreign adversary number one. The Biden line is that Trump is being played by Beijing. It's difficult, however, to deny Biden's record of accommodating China as vice president under Obama. A President Biden would more likely be internationalist in outlook than Trump has been. That would make him more likely to take military action than Trump, who, for all his apparent hot-headedness, should be given credit for not having started a new war. Biden, by contrast, has supported just about every foreign intervention America has embarked upon in the last 30 years. For him, restoring the soul of America may well mean bombing somewhere to bits. He would also look to revive the multilateral trade agreements that Trump so rudely junked. At first blush, Biden's victory might seem like bad news for Brexit Britain, since Trump has always made such positive noises about our departure from the European Union. But Brexiteers have become pessimistic about achieving the beautiful, beautiful US-UK trade deal that Trump has so long promised. There's now growing excitement under Biden, the United States and the United Kingdom might join the Trans-Pacific Partnership, now renamed the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, to form the world's greatest trading bloc. Besides, the political class only likes dealing with the political class, and most Tory MPs would be happier working with Biden appointees than the wild characters from the Trump administration. Under Biden and Boris, the bonds of the Obama and Cameron administrations might be reestablished. Both countries can happily go back to hawking their interests to Beijing. The civil unrest in America will abate, at least temporarily, and everybody will forget about those chaotic years when Donald Trump was in charge. Keep on rocking in the free world. What do you think? Whose America are you voting for? Tell us more of your thoughts in the matter in the comments down below so we can talk about it some more. The elections aren't the only exciting thing happening in Washington. Watch our other videos. U.S. military officials considered using heat ray at D.C. protest to find out the latest details on this skin-sizzling hot topic, the science behind it, and most importantly, where it's being used, possibly by mad scientists. Thank you for watching. This is Trending's Finest. Always the trendiest, always the finest.